In today's inflationary environment and a looming economic recession, every penny counts. One of the biggest money leaks in any medical practice are credit card merchant fees. These are the fees that merchants, in this case medical practices, pay for the privilege of receiving credit card payments from our patients. These charges start from at least 2% and up. So, for instance, if you run through $1 million in credit card payments that you receive from patients, that results in at least $20,000 in merchant processing fees to your practice. To help us mitigate some of this burden, credit card surcharges have been increasingly implemented by medical practices and other businesses. You may notice that among your mechanics and restaurants. In today's video, we are going to discuss the why and how of credit card surcharges in medicine. Please feel free to drop any questions or comments during our live stream, and we will try to answer them during or after the live stream. And today, I'm excited to welcome back Cheryl McKenna from Merchant Advocates to help us clarify some of the rules so that we can compliantly and safely implement credit card surcharging. Now, don't let her youthful appearance fool you. She has been in the credit card processing industry for close to 25 years. So thank you for helping us out again, Cheryl.
You are welcome. And I will have to say that this whole topic is confusing for even me. I have studied it, and there's so many different types of surcharges. I actually call it fee passing, because there's 5 different types of surcharges. So if you hear me say fee passing, that's what I'm talking about, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of different kinds. Some require registration, some aren't legal in certain states, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to use the term today, fee passing, and we're going to talk about that.
Sounds good. So can you briefly tell us what is a credit card surcharges versus a cash discount or a convenience fee?
Yes. So a cash discount, I've kind of broken it down in a couple different categories. So for instance, a cash discount is available to all merchant types, so all business types. There's no registration required, and you could implement a cash discount as either a flat fee, right? So, okay, anytime you use a credit card, we're going to charge you $1 or $5 or $10. Or you can implement a cash discount as a percentage. So that's cash discount. Surcharging is prohibited in only Connecticut and Massachusetts. It's not prohibited, it's available to all merchant types. Registration is required. It was actually prohibited in Colorado up until, I think maybe
tomorrow.
It's actually, tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be the last day, unless something changes.
Tomorrow will be the last day. So Friday you could start, folks. I'm in Colorado.
Colorado, yeah.
So with surcharges, it's actually credit cards only. So debit cards, even the debit cards that people are giving you where they don't have to put in their PIN number. So debit cards are not eligible, and it needs to be a percentage. Okay. So then we move on to a convenience fee, which is also available to all merchants. Registration not required, and it can be a flat fee or a percentage. So
it sounds like there are a lot of choices. When it comes to these surcharges, which one can a typical insurance participating medical practice use?
Yeah, so I actually have talked to quite a few insurance gurus, and they are all gotten very interested in this topic as well. They didn't quite understand what I was talking about until I explained it to them. So interestingly enough, they went through and looked at like terms and conditions for a lot of the insurance companies that their clients work with. And most contracts actually don't address credit card surcharges or cash discount yet. But what they do say is that if you decide to pass any fees, it must be to all patients across the board. So you really could do it. The only area that I see an issue, and I would love your input on this, John, is what about when you receive a virtual credit card payment from the insurance companies, which you shouldn't do anyways. You should call and tell them you don't want those. But I know that you've been particularly interested in this topic. So that's one of the places where people seem to get stumped. Like, what do they do about the virtual credit cards? Because some systems are set up such that it will apply the percentage, and most people choose percentage versus flat fee, by the way. But a lot of systems are set up such that it will actually apply it across the board, unless, of course, it's a debit card. So
we're
what
thinking,
have you thought about that?
yeah. So we're talking about a couple of different issues. Number one, the medical practice like mine as the merchant versus now the insurance company that is trying to pay us using a credit card. Now they are the merchant and we are now the customer. So is that what you're saying?
Well, okay. So if they're giving you the credit card, right? So do you accept, like at your practice, do the insurance companies reimburse you at all via virtual credit card number, or have you just told them no on all of those?
I think they have tried. So what would happen? So we are now the merchant, and now the insurance company is paying us by credit card. So if we took that payment from the insurance company, number one, not only have we taken the usual contractual discount from the insurance company, now you're taking yet another haircut, another discount by having them pay you using a credit card. So you're taking another 2+% discount. And what is interesting is that these insurance companies have some sort of fiduciary relationship with these credit card companies. So they can get kickbacks. Essentially, they're paying the provider or the qualified healthcare professional even less by paying us using a credit card. So any smart healthcare provider will not accept a virtual credit card payment from the insurance companies. Now, Medicare has recently given guidance, not law, but guidance on these credit card payments. So even though they say that they don't outright say that insurance or payers cannot pay us by credit card, it doesn't say that the practices cannot refuse. Meaning, if your billing company or biller is smart, they would decline and say, we would want ACH, which is direct deposit into your bank account, or a paper check. But obviously, ACH via EFT or electronic fund transfer is much preferred because the cash is more readily available. The revenue cycle is decreased using that method. But coming back to whether or not practices can use or can implement surcharges, you said some states don't allow it, and Colorado is going to start allowing it beginning after tomorrow.
Yes.
And I think there are only 4 other states that don't allow it so far.
Well, the most recent information that I have, and this was I looked this up either at the end of May or the beginning of June, because frankly, one of the problems with these fee passing programs is that it's the rules, the compliance, it's changing all the time. So not only from, obviously the credit card companies are not happy about it because a lot of the card holders are not happy about it. So we're getting a little bit of pushback from them on some of these different fee passing programs. The laws are rapidly changing in different states as it becomes more and more commonplace. But then also, so for instance, with the surcharge, I know for the most recent that it should only be illegal in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So I think those are the only 2 states that are left. But the caveat is that there's a few other states where it's not enforceable. They have laws against it, but for some reason it's not enforceable. And I I couldn't even find all the nitty gritty on that. So basically, you're okay, from what I understand, at least starting on Friday, to do this anywhere except for Connecticut and Massachusetts. So
Yeah, I'm sure there are you can Google and find the state regs for your particular state. So,
oh yeah.
For practices or dental or medical practices that you've seen implement this surcharge, what kind of response have they seen or have they told you?
So actually, I've only heard of 2 practices that have done this. So one, it was a dental practice, and well, both are dental practices, but the one dental practice only did it for about 4 months, and the patients were upset, which created a very negative environment for the front desk team, the front office team. So they decided just not to do it. And they, interestingly enough, what they did instead, they put up a sign that says, "We value our patients, and therefore we will never charge you a fee to use your credit card."
So they changed back to not
Yeah.
surcharging.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other practice, they're still doing it. They ended up, it was difficult for them to figure out exactly the percentage that they were going to charge. So they had to go through and look at months and months of statements. But like, for instance, so they could figure out the right amount to pass on without overcharging the patient. The problem with that is the rates are changing all the time. So I'll give you an example. Just in April of this year, Visa raised the rate for hand-entered credit cards. If you don't have matching zip code, address verification information, if you don't have the matching zip code, by 0.8%. So
Yikes.
It's one of those where it's like a constantly moving target.
Yeah. So
yeah.
One of the misconceptions for some practices is that they think, oh, we can surcharge and we can make a profit from the surcharges. Nothing could be further from the truth. You cannot profit from these surcharges. And you're supposed to figure out the nominal rate that you are being charged and then pass that on to the patients. So you are not making money by passing the surcharges to your customers, to the patients. And the things that you have to start thinking about are, one, what is the potential impact on your customer's experience? And also, number two, perhaps what are your competitors doing, right? So those are a couple of things that you need to consider when you begin this process. But it is not chump change. If you add it up for every provider, that could be definitely 5 figures every single year that you as a practice are incurring.
Absolutely. And it's straight to the bottom line profit, right? So this is, you get that money back and it is straight to your bottom line. So it's obviously a very attractive thing. As a business owner, you look at that and think, wow, okay, 20 grand. There's no cost for that 20 grand. It's just straight to my bottom line.
Well, slight initial implementation costs, training, and perhaps goodwill that you may lose from implementing the surcharges and from your patients. But I think as more and more merchants, not just in medicine, but more and more merchants across the board start surcharging, it may make it a lot more tolerable, acceptable, or more commonplace. So patients will think, oh, okay, well, that's just another practice that other businesses are doing. When it comes to cash discounts, I don't think we can do that because we are bound by contractual agreements for most of us, contractual agreements with insurance companies. So we can't really mark up the cost and then write it out or discount it if they're paying by cash versus credit card. You know what I'm saying? So the fee schedule is set with contract with a third-party payer. So I don't think we can do the cash discount, but we can do the surcharge by determining the nominal amount that we are typically charged by the merchant processors, and then pass that along. So I don't think calculating that is going to be too difficult. Maybe look back at 6 months of your credit card statements and then figure out how much is run through and what are your charges make that division, multiply by 100, and then there you go. That now you have the percentage that you would pass along to your customers, to your patients in this case.
Right. And I mean, if you don't cover all of your costs, I mean, you're covering some of the costs.
Correct.
So, I mean, obviously that's going to be a benefit to you. Even so, if it cost you $10 and you covered 9 and you had to pay 1, it's better than paying 10.
Correct. It is better
That's
than
just
nothing.
math. So.
Correct. And
Yeah.
I think for most practices, we're probably going to be undercharging so that we're not overcharging, and number one, keep the patients happy, and number two, you're not supposed to overcharge anyway. So when you overcharge, that money does not go to you. It actually goes directly to the merchant processor. So why would you be charging more to benefit the merchant processor?
Well, that's been a real issue that's come up quite a bit. So I always say that this is the newest get-rich-quick scheme in the merchant services industry, which, by the way, is full of get-rich-quick schemes over time. I mean, I remember when I first entered the merchant services industry, people would charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and this was a long time ago, so it was worth even more then. But they would charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars just as a application fee, right? Now there's no application fees that are charged. Leasing on equipment. I've never had a client lease equipment, but I've had plenty of people come to me after they've already been suckered into leasing equipment. And it costs a lot of money when you multiply that monthly dollar amount over the 4-year contract period. You realize that you just basically paid $5,000 for a $500 or $5,000 for a $500 piece of equipment. It's not worth it. But this, I mean, I'll give you an example of what the industry thinks about these types of programs. When you're signing up with a merchant processor and a sales agent comes to you, and you guys are probably getting inundated with this, but I went on a website that was catering to agents. I've been on a lot of them, but this specific one said up at the top in bold, like italics, blah, blah, blah. The race to the bottom has never been more lucrative, ... for you. And I was like, oh, it's so terrible. And really, I was like, why is this happening? So it's basically, this has become so common because I call it the perfect storm of things that have happened, right? So in 2012, there was a class action suit which gave the right to apply a surcharge of up to 4%, right? So this is 10 years ago. So it's starting to slowly work its way and become more common. But really, the bottom line profit has suffered immensely for most businesses during COVID. There's been a huge loss of revenue. And then the increased costs for the goods and services, it's really squeezing profit margins to the breaking point. So that's why I think that the program these types of programs, fee passing programs, are so popular. And before, it was the boom era and everyone was making money and it was great and everybody was happy. And now all of a sudden people are like, gas is, depending on where you live, $5, $6, $7 a gallon. I mean, supplies to run a practice have skyrocketed.
If you can even find them.
Yeah, if you can find them, right? And then when you do find them, no matter how much they cost, you're like, I have to buy everything I can because I have to have it, because you cannot practice without these, supplies that you need. So it's been available since 2012, but it hasn't taken off until very recently. And it's one of those, I think I said to you a couple months ago, I'm like, it's coming like a tidal wave. It's just, it comes from the coasts and then it moves in. But there are also practices as well that choose to just figure out how to lower their costs for the merchant services and not pass anything on. And you mentioned something about, well, you have to consider, what are your competitors doing? What's the experience that your team is going to have if you implement this with, what are the patients going to say? And what is the team going to have to deal with? Nobody likes to deal with a volatile or negative environment. So there's a lot of ways. I feel like there's two ways that people are looking at it. I'm going to pass on the cost, or I'm going to lower my costs for merchant services, and I'm just going to let my patients know that I'll never charge them for accepting a credit card. So it's really up to you guys how you want to do it.
Yeah. So speaking of lowering costs, what are some of the ways that you would suggest? So going off topic a little bit, what are some of the ways that you recommend that merchants do to decrease transaction costs, merchant processing costs?
Well, we touched on two of them, the virtual credit cards. So those are the most expensive credit cards, the virtual credit cards from the insurance companies.
I just say no. Just say no.
Yeah, just say no. But you mentioned, and I didn't want to interrupt, you mentioned the ACH/EFT or paper check. But I really want to caution everyone, if you go with the EFT ACH option, please make sure that you've got a spreadsheet set up and you know if you're getting charged, because I have clients now, like through some billing services, that the EFT used to be free. And I've heard a couple now, 1%, that's becoming really common, but I've heard a couple that are up to 2.5. 2.5.
Wait,
So,
who's collecting this money? This is going from bank to bank. How do you who's the middle person?
the insurance company is charging for EFT. Just like yeah.
Oh my God.
Because so many people are probably getting off of VCC.
Yeah.
Don't you love all these acronyms, by the way? There's so many acronyms.
Virtual credit card, VCC. Yeah.
VCC.
Yeah. The
So
well-run practices belong to different societies. Hopefully, well, we're streaming this live to the Thriving Urology Practice Facebook group. The smart administrators and billers and coders, they know to say no thank you to the VCCs.
Absolutely. But just keep an eye on the costs for EFTs.
Okay. That's good to know.
So that's one way to lower costs. Another way, and I mentioned this when we're talking about the moving target for what surcharge you pass on. Any hand-entered sales, Visa specifically, which usually is about 65% of the credit cards that you're going to accept. That's the average market share. They are upcharging. It's the biggest rate increase I've ever seen in a specific Visa category. And like you said, Dr. Lynn, I've been doing this for almost 25 years. It went up 0.8%. So if you have to hand enter a credit card, you absolutely need to enter the address information. And it's only the numeric information. The system can only handle numeric information. So as an example, if someone's billing address of their credit card is 123 Main Street, the street 123, that's all you would need to put in. There's no way to put in alpha characters into the system and have it read it. And then, of course, the zip code. So you don't need the city or the state. But you'd be surprised at how many people, when I look at merchant statements and I look at, I don't know, at least probably like 100 a month. It's a lot. I should count it sometime.
You're such a geek.
Interesting. I know. I know I am. We all are in our own ways, though, if we're good at what we do, right? So that's great. It's a compliment. But I can look at the statement and I can see that this person's not putting in the address information. And you'd be surprised at how many times when I call up my client or a prospect or someone's just come to me for help, and I have them check with their team, and it turns out their equipment's not even prompting for it. And I had one large practice in San Antonio. I think I talked to them 3 or 4 weeks ago. Their system that they switched to isn't even capable of that. And I was like, what? We've had address verification system for, I don't know how long, but it's been a long time. And what yo-yo would create this amazing technology and fail to put in AVS?
So is that, I don't know. So it's just something that you would contact your credit card processing company to enable that on your machine, or how does that happen?
Well, you could send me a statement and I could look at it for you and see if that's what's actually going on at the practice. You know what I mean? Because owners are really busy. And I would say the easiest way to figure out what's going on with your merchant services is to just send me a statement and I can look at that. I know what all those acronyms mean. And I can tell if you're hand entering credit cards and if the team is putting in the zip code. And sometimes it's not that it's not prompting, the equipment's not prompting. It also could be that they're just bypassing it. Or here's a really interesting one. I've had several instances where the system was prompting, the team was putting it in, the data wasn't being passed. There was some communication disconnect. It wasn't passing the address information. So even if you call up your credit card company or your merchant provider and ask, or even if your team is doing that, it might not actually be passed. So you're doing everything right. Something's broken in that chain and you're the one paying the additional 0.8%. So that can really add up.
So much to look at, I guess. So one of the easiest ways sounds like is to just send you a credit card statement, and then you can kind of look through that with a fine-tooth comb and then alert the merchant, in this case, medical practice, what is missing, what you could do better, and how you could save money. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, especially relative to merchant advocates?
Yeah. So the whole goal of Merchant Advocate is to help business owners save money on their merchant services rates and fees without changing providers. And that's really what puts us above the other companies out there. We're not a merchant provider. So generally what you see is that you're being solicited by a merchant provider that says, switch to us and we'll save you money. And we say, we'll save you money, but don't switch. Our model works because we're performance-based. We only get paid if we save you money, which means obviously when we do the review of the statement, we're going to be completely honest about if you're being overcharged or not. So in contrast to the merchant services provider, which I've seen so many proposals where they'll put this proposal in front of you, and this has probably happened to quite a few of you out there that are watching this, but they're going to tell you, oh yeah, we'll save you $10,000 a year, $5,000 a year, $30,000 a year. And you get your statement and you're like, doesn't really look any different, but you're not sure. So their goal is to charge you the most amount of money, and that's how they make their profit. How we make our money is by lowering your costs as much as possible. So therefore, also the analysis and the review of the merchant statement, there's no risk because we're not going to charge you anything for that. And there's no obligation. So you just send it. We take a look. We'll have a conversation. You'll talk directly to me, and then we'll figure out possible next steps. And maybe you're in really good shape and everything's fine, but at least you know, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yep.
And then if you have questions about anything else, like chip equipment or VCCs or anything like that, then you've got my ear for a little bit, and we can just chat about whatever questions you have. Full
disclosure, my practice, we've sent the statement to you, and then you looked at us and said, well, there's really nothing much that you can do. So it was a free analysis, and I'm not your client, but at least we know, like you said, at least we know.
Yeah. So that when you do have that merchant provider or that salesperson come into your practice, or generally what happens is you are part of some sort of association or what have you, and almost all of them will partner with a merchant provider, right? So at some point you get this email and it's like, we have partnered with this merchant provider to give you this great deal. And you're thinking, well, maybe we should check into that. So you delegate that to a team member who then completely wastes their time, or maybe even you get talked into switching and you're not even really saving. So it's just, why not know? And then you can be comfortable. And then also even if you're not being overcharged, I will put you on my reminder list and we'll reach out every 6 months and get another statement and do it again for free. So if anything changes, we can then address it. If anything doesn't, then you'll know you're still in great shape. So
definitely.
easy.
And we'll have the chat offline because we're making some switches here coming up. So we'll chat offline. When it comes to surcharges, sometimes you can't just use whatever equipment you have, right? Or can I just use whatever I have?
Well, this is one of the areas where I've been really talking to people about it. So first of all, you either have to figure out how to remember surcharging requires registration. Okay. And it requires a minimum 30-day registration.
With the credit card company like Visa or MasterCard.
With the card brand. So when I say card brand, that's Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. Supposedly, American Express doesn't allow surcharging at all. But I know there's a lot of people out there who they're accepting American Express. So anyways, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So if you're going to do that, maybe you shouldn't accept American Express anymore, or you're going to have to train the team how to figure that out. Anyway, it seems a little complicated, but so you have to register for that. Generally, it's best to work with a processor who will help you through that because your equipment needs to be programmed so that it's compliant with the receipt requirements. So you have receipt requirements on there as well. And then you'll also have signage requirements. So you'd be amazed at how many times, like I was just in Hawaii, yay, lucky me, last week. And there are a lot of folks, a lot of businesses in Hawaii, especially restaurants and like the shaved ice places that
love those.
We went with 2 kids, we got shaved ice like every day. So, but yeah, their signage was not correct. And so part of me is like, I'm on vacation. And then part of me is like, wow, I should really say something to that person to help them out so they don't get in trouble. But yeah, there's a lot of compliance requirements. So you can't just use the equipment that you have because it has to have certain programming in it. And that programming, like that program is only, I'm not a technical person, but it's only created for certain terminal types, right? So you have to have that terminal that accepts this program that will print this on the receipt and will have these line items and it'll have, this disclosure, et cetera, et cetera. So right. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to post a sign that says, hey, everybody, if you use a credit card, I'm going to charge you 2%. And then you like add a line item to your, you put it, you tip line or something on your terminal. You can't do that.
That's
but be
correct.
Really careful. Also, I just want to make sure we touched briefly on the website that I went to that said the race to the bottom has never been more lucrative. Like, be so careful who you guys choose to work with, because let's think about the get rich quick scheme. Just do a little math. If your hard costs are 2%, your patients are getting charged 4%. Think of how much that sales agent and that processor is making off of your patients. It's not good. It's not good at all. So I just didn't want us to end before I mentioned that. Be very, very careful.
So a lot of things to think about. You got to make sure your states allow you to do it, and you have to let Visa, MasterCard, these brand accounts know that you're doing this. And I think there's a 30-day minimum requirement to let them know. There are strict compliance requirements, signage, and on the actual printed receipt on a credit card. There has to be verbiage, and also there has to be a separate line item indicating that this is the surcharge and here are the costs of the services that you received. So requirements, there are strict reporting requirements, and obviously partnering with a vendor that can help you through this will be very helpful. Hardware requirements and programming.
Yeah, definitely. I have a practice in Nebraska that tried to do it themselves. And I mean, I walked them through. You can actually go on, if you just Google or whatever search engine you use, if you just look up Visa and Surcharge, you can get to the actual Visa site that describes their requirements. So it's readily available. It's actually implementing it that became such a challenge that they were just like, they decided not to do it.
Sounds good. Well, let's see. I think we've talked enough about this surcharge thing. Anything else we should discuss before we end?
I think we covered a lot today. We covered address verification. We covered surcharge. We covered virtual credit cards. I think we did a lot. So sorry, everyone, if your brains are just like, woo, woo, woo. But you always have us to reach out to if you have any questions. So
You bet. And I know in the past you have allowed me to leave your number in the video description. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much again, Cheryl.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. All right. For those of you with any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And I'm sure either myself or Cheryl will try to answer them. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Bye-bye.